Okay. All right. Well, then let's get started. Good morning, everyone. I am Kamla Rampersad de Silva, Chief Executive Officer of the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to part 2 of our special panel discussions on the impact on the business sector on the rising tensions between the US and Venezuelan governments. 2 years ago, I recall for our global conference, Gillian Tett from the Financial Times warned that the time of peace was actually just an aberration for the last 2 decades or so, and that today we would see wars all over the globe. The news today demonstrates what she is saying. It's filled with geopolitical conflicts with so many countries, and the fact that it's now on our doorstep means it can't be ignored. We therefore consider it at CCGI to be our duty to encourage these discussions in a space that helps our directors to be more aware of potential impact on businesses and therefore be more prepared. This opening segment will be carried live stream, so not the entire panel discussion, just part of it on our YouTube channel as well as on our LinkedIn. However, it is being recorded and will be shared on our YouTube page within a few days. This is because today's topic is a major issue, not just for us in Trinidad and Tobago, but around the Caribbean region. Today, we have 4 very special panelists with us, 2 of whom are appearing on a CCGI platform for the first time. I want to thank each of them sincerely, David Alfonso Greene and Sachin Ganpat. And we also welcome back Keeghan Patrick from St. Lucia and Kristian Bainey, a Trinidadian who has been living in Canada for many years and who has also appeared on our platform before. I will give a more detailed introduction on our panelists in a few minutes. But first, I want to thank last week's panelists, Reshma Advani Rojas, Lauren Pouchet, Ken Hackshaw, and Martha Miller, all of whom had brought great insights for the business sector. In fact, last week's discussion set the context for part 2 today. And I recall it was Martha who said that the war begins long before the first bullet is fired. So our panelists had clearly underscored the threat of war and its likelihood, its impact on us. As I said last week, the Caribbean Sea is our economic lifeline. Any significant disruption in this basin directly threatens the core of our commerce. So we had examined 3 scenarios, and today we would like to consider how this would impact our digital resilience. So scenario 1. The potential of direct conflict between the US and Venezuela. In the digital space, this is likely to lead to disruptive attacks on critical business infrastructure. Scenario 2, that there's a protracted standoff, pretty much what we are experiencing today. At this time, there may very well be sustained espionage that is taking place, intellectual property theft, and other things influencing the operations of our business. Scenario 3, that there may be a negotiated deal and the US quietly leaves our waters. Whilst this may be something that we will welcome, there is still a need for us to consider the potential for spoiler attacks and even opportunistic cybercrime that may be committed by those who are not currently actors in this active scenario. Each of our panelists will be considering these points. They would be looking at what forms this challenge can take. It may be disinformation campaigns, ransomware against critical infrastructure, data theft from government and businesses. So many areas that we have to consider that we have seen other countries contend with. So our purpose today is not to predict which path will unfold, but to prepare our business mindset for all of them. We must move from being passive observers to proactive architects of our own resilience. So, the continuation of this series is really just the starting point for you, our directors. It is a crucial step in shifting the geopolitical challenge from boardroom worry into a very structured business analysis. Because, as we identified last week, decisions made in Washington and Caracas will shape our context, but our decision will make our own companies, our own organizations, our decisions will determine our future. So I want to thank our panelists who will be helping us to explore this vital conversation. There are a few persons who have joined us today for the first time. I want to say welcome to all of you and to share that the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute is a nonprofit membership organization that was established in 2012. We currently enjoy over 300 members from a range of private and public sector organizations across the Caribbean. Our membership includes persons from Jamaica, Barbados, St. Lucia, Guyana, Belize, the British Virgin Islands, St. Martin, Suriname, and of course here in Trinidad and Tobago. And through our bundle membership with JMMB, we also have members from the Dominican Republic and Colombia. Just saying, there are lots of benefits to being part of a vibrant organization like ours, including participating in these discussions. So if you're not yet a member, do consider joining us and actively contribute to the conversation on how we can improve leadership and governance to achieve sustainable outcomes in our region. So persons may join us as individual members, or your companies may choose to pay for bundle membership, which can cover 6 to 12 members. As we get started with our panel, I just want to remind participants, many of whom do attend our sessions regularly, we ask everyone to ensure that their full names are captured on their screens. This is because we are in a virtual room that allows everyone to easily access other participants. So it's important to us that you are identifiable. We also ask to ensure that proceedings flow very smoothly, that microphones are kept on mute. During the Q&A segment, we do invite persons to share their points of view, at which point in time, if you are invited, please ensure that you mute your microphone again as soon as you are done so as to minimize any disruptive noises. And of course, throughout the session, you can make comments or ask questions in the chat feature, which will be brought to the attention of the panelists. Finally, we'll put up a survey link towards the end of the session. We had tremendously good feedback from last week's panel discussion. As a matter of fact, the recommendation that there be a part 2 came from the feedback. So we will thank you if you will take the 2 minutes and please complete that survey for us. Let me also thank our CCGI team who are providing support today. Laura Sinanan, who manages room logistics, Quentrell De Silva, who is running the live stream, and Monique Romano, who will post the survey link. All 3 of them will be managing the Zoom room as well. I thank them very much for the hard work they've been doing for CCGI. So now I'd want to move to introducing our panelists for today. I know everyone is very anxious to hear from them. Their detailed profiles are in the agenda that was shared. And I will ask Laura to put it in the chat again, just in case anyone would not have received it from their emails this morning. So I would be sharing just briefly on each of our panelists because we want to get into the discussion as soon as possible. We'll begin with Sachin Ganpat. Sachin is a seasoned cybersecurity and networking leader with over 2 decades of experience securing and operating critical digital infrastructure, particularly within the financial services sector. He has led large-scale network and security transformations, strengthening cyber resilience, visibility, and incident readiness in environments where availability, trust, and continuity are non-negotiable. Next, I'd like to introduce David Antonio Greene. David is a leading voice within the cybersecurity community with 3 decades of cross-functional expertise across banking, systems development, IT operations, IT audit, executive sales, and leadership. As managing director, Caribbean at CYPFER Inc. I hope I pronounced that correctly, David. Right. At CYPHER Inc., he drives the company's regional expansion while empowering businesses to build unshakable defenses against today's most sophisticated cyber threats. And let me also add that David has a rare ability to translate complex technical realities into executive action, which makes him a trusted advisor to C-suite leaders across the Caribbean, North America, and Europe. Our third panelist is a young man, someone I am quite impressed with and look forward to see his growth in the region. And this is Keeghan Patrick. Keeghan is an exceptionally dedicated problem solver with a strong academic and professional background. He earned a master's degree in advanced manufacturing and design from MIT, complemented by a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from UE. Keeghan further enriched his knowledge through a semester at Harvard Business School, focusing on strategy and technology, and honed his entrepreneurial skills at Draper U Ventures. Draper U Ventures founder accelerator program in Silicon Valley. And he is currently one of the co-founders at Orbtronics in St. Lucia. I'm not sure if Kristian, oh yes, Kristian did join us. So let me also introduce Kristian at this time. Kristian Bainey is an accomplished professional with over 15 years of diverse and progressively responsible IT experience. Demonstrates a remarkable combination of technical expertise and leadership skills. He holds a master's and bachelor's degree in information systems, a diploma in computer systems technology, and an artificial intelligence program certification. Additionally, he spent years part-time lecturing at university and college levels, teaching PMP and Scrum Master, and part-time coaching students to attain their PMP. Currently, he holds the position of president-elect for the Northern Alberta PMI chapter, and he's also writing the new PMP study guide for PMBOK 8, that is, with Wiley Publishing. So let me say a very, very warm welcome to all of our panelists. And we would begin the conversation with Sachin. Sachin, we had offered 3 likely scenarios: the potential of all-out warfare between the US and Canada, and that warfare is not necessarily simply military. We know that it can be cyber war as well. There may be a protracted standoff in terms of their military aggression, or the US may very well make a deal with Venezuela and leave without further conflict. So, Sachin, the floor is now all yours. We look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Great. Thanks, Kamla, and thanks for the introduction, even though I'm a bit disappointed that you didn't also call me a young man, but I'll live with that. All right, so well, first of all, I will let me preface that all the opinions that are going to be shared by myself today is that of my own and not that of my employer. So all these conversations are just that of myself, right? So Kamla would have already indicated some areas that you would see disruptions that are happening that may happen within the organization within the Caribbean region. So besides the digital disruptions, such as denial of service attacks or in ransomware attacks, we may see things like misinformation, disinformation, which also understand that that's also a cybersecurity type issue. What we will also see things like espionage, data theft, and these are these are used that feeds back into misinformation, disinformation campaigns that may also weaken positions. So we can see that cybersecurity is an important an important aspect for a lot of organizations. I will stop short of calling this cyber warfare, in the sense that um, a lot of these attacks happens normally in a lot of daily operations that we see from organizations. Now, an important thing to note is that cybersecurity is not an IT issue. And I see that often where it's placed a lot on IT departments to deal with, but it's a core tenet of business continuity and survival of the business itself. And this should be something that is considered at the board levels. And I must say, I'm seeing a lot more over the past 5 years or so, especially with the pandemic, conversations around IT continuity from the business aspect. So I think that the pandemic, it played a big role in terms of getting us a lot more comfortable with IT continuity as a business aspect. Now, in the Caribbean, this matters a lot because our economies are highly interconnected, and for the most part, very fragile. Right. Right. So no, Kamla would have mentioned three scenarios, but a lot of what we may be doing, it's all going to be linked, and in many cases overlap from what are the kind of activities that are expected. Now, so we are indicated that threats, especially if we do have any incidents where there are rising tensions, it's ransomware and DDoS attacks. We may see it against critical infrastructure, government, financial services, because these are some key areas that are meant to disrupt. Service providers as well, because communications is always a key aspect of disruptions within any organizations. Sorry, within any nation states. Disinformation campaigns, because this weakens trust, right? This also, I mean, we've seen it in the past with many other campaigns that's happening. Disinformation continues to happen throughout, and we become a lot more, what's the word? Benign, I guess, especially coming from the pandemic, right? There's a lot of things that we still don't know what to trust, right? And so it's something that we need to be ahead of as you go ahead. For businesses, your priority would be protecting your backup and recovery systems, because these are the key areas that, if your business is affected, you want to recover quickly. You want to maintain cash and transaction systems, because if your payroll is affected, then well, that's it. Your business not going to function there, right? If your people are not going to be working, then there's going to be a problem. You want to maintain communications with customers and suppliers, again, for that disruption, disinformation campaigns that may be happening. You want to be able to address that. And the most important thing, you want to be able to protect your people. You want to find ways by which your people can continue to operate and work while feeling safe, right? And that may not be in an office, whether it's remote work, those type of things. And you would want to have those types of systems already in place for now, right? In terms of a proactive situation, you may consider how there may be greater escalation of threats. Those same sorry, those same activities that you were seeing, DDoS, ransomware, a lot more of those activities might ramp up, because at the end they're trying to overwhelm the resources and the people in order to you know, have a better chance of success in some of those cases, and cause as much harm as possible. So and that's why you know, it might be key. You know, AI is a big thing now, but AI and automation are key aspects of cybersecurity now, where they're implementing a lot of automated systems to try to address these types of threats that's coming in, and these types of attacks are happening beforehand. Um, Assume a compromise. As it is, you know, there's a saying in cybersecurity, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. You have to assume that all your system is already compromised. And if your system is already compromised, you should be looking at what you can do to reduce the risk, the scope of an attack, those types of things, right? So you'd want to ensure that you built in your controls within your organization that you could limit any scope of an attack that may happen from the inside, you know. You want to add additional restrictions where possible, right? It may mean that it adds additional bureaucracy, but it also may mean that in case of something happens, you will, yeah, you could protect your systems. Increase your monitoring and vigilance, again, automated systems, but also in terms of making sure that your people are always aware, and that's where reinforcement of communication is happening. Reinforce communications with staff, with customers, with suppliers. You want to avoid the misinformation. You want to avoid panic that may be happening across there. Other risk factors that we have to consider, and a lot of people have been pushed to the cloud. I would ask, where are our cloud systems, right? We use internet a lot. We use e-commerce a lot. Where are those systems coming in? We have a lot. As the Caribbean region, we are joined by very few, right? You could count on one hand the amount of cables that come into Trinidad and Tobago and the ones that's going to be to all the islands, right? Those are undersea cables. So you may want to consider diverse type connectivity. I mean, Starlink is becoming a big part. Wireless technologies can be disrupted, yes, jammers and those types of things, but those things are still very difficult to do on a wide nation scale, right? So let's get so those types of communications are a very feasible type mechanisms. It's one of the reasons why Starlink was very important for communications in different areas during some war times. Our concentrated energy infrastructure is also a big part, right? What we wouldn't be able to run without electricity. I can speak a lot for the Trinidad and Tobago context because our only mechanism of generating electricity right now is through oil and gas, right? That is, we are one of two countries in the world that still utilizes 100% fossil fuels for energy, right? So if our energy is disrupted, what happens, right? So if something is very protracted, you're not going to be able to run things for a very long period of time, right? So what else are we going to do in order to be able to function? So renewable energy might be a good bet in some cases. And then we have little redundancies in key transportation and logistics, right? So getting supplies are going to be some big areas. So I'm saying these things because you have to consider and you have to think about these things now as you go into your business, as you're looking at your BCPs, in terms of improving the actions there. So I'll just close off with this. So I use NIST a lot as my framework for in terms of cybersecurity. So in the cybersecurity framework 2.0, and it's identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. And that first one is identify. And many businesses have not done a very good job of identifying key aspects in the organization in order to function, right? You want to be able to identify key people, key stakeholders, key assets, key processes, because those are the things that you need to make sure in your BCP that you have proper actions to be able to deal with it. Planner is going to be key in this thing. Cybersecurity is a continuous process, right? So you would see events happening before any major activity, right? There's a canary in the gold mine. You talk about the canary in the gold mine or coal mine, I mean. So when I talk about that increased vigilance, you should be vigilant all now, right? You should be looking for any activity that may indicate that a major attack might be happening. And this is not just internet. A lot of people just monitor your firewalls and internet traffic. I'm talking about inside your network. You need to have mechanisms in place to determine whether or not there's activity is happening that indicates an attack may be oncoming, right? Exfiltration of information, people accessing stuff that they or trying to access stuff that they shouldn't be accessing. And people might be a user, a device, those types of things, right? You want to be able to identify those types of activity that's happening within your organization. Right. Leadership and governance may fail before the technology. right? Um, During the pandemic, no one knew what to do, and everyone was trying to function as best as possible. We had a very, very nice use case data to learn from going forward in terms of business continuity. Large organizations, even medium organizations, are not made and built to make decisions quickly, right? And you may need to do that now, right? So that's why, again, understanding the BCP, if something should happen, how do we make decision as to it? So knowing what to do before it happens is going to be an important differentiator, right? The last thing I'd want to say, all right, so know your third-party risk. I talk about the cloud. Um, but because I'll ask the question, do you think your SLA will matter? In case, right? So every contract has force majeure, right? And that force majeure talks about any militant action, acts of God or nature, those types of things, right? So if something happens, and so you could hold up your SLA, but I have a SLA, that wouldn't matter. In there. So you need to understand where is that happening. If your cloud provider or payment system processor goes down, right? Who do you call? Who do you respond to? That you have to consider that, right? So I'm not saying, you talk about plans are important. Plans, planning is important. That's the thing, right? No, they say no plan survives the battlefield, so they say, but it's still going to be important because you need to know what how you're going to act when time comes, right? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sachin. I think that you have really brought out some key points, one of which was a complete surprise to me, actually, that we are totally reliant on oil and gas for our energy. And that's a level of vulnerability that individual businesses should be looking at, as you say, in terms of what sources of renewable energy they may be able to access that keeps them functioning in the event there's any major disruption in that. Uh, so thank you. I also appreciate the many different ways you have demonstrated what businesses need to be looking out for. Particularly, I like how you ended with that sentence, leadership and governance may fail before the technology. So let's prevent that from happening. So let's now invite David. David, we are quite looking forward to hearing your take now in terms of how businesses may be impacted and some recommendations they too may consider.
Thank you, thank you, Kamla, and thank you for inviting myself and the rest of the panelists to this. And I'm very happy that Sachin led off the way he did because he covered quite a bit. It was quite a mouthful, Sachin, and I suspect that the other two panelists, Keeghan and Kristian, may end up repeating some of what Sachin would have already said. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm just going to try and kind of fill in into some little pockets and maybe take a different focus. Since we have executives on the call, maybe focus on where I see the impact is going to be. Now, I'm going to start off by saying that there's nothing new under the sun. So what we're seeing playing out right now has actually happened before. I'm an avid reader, and if anyone can ever get their hands on this book called Cyber War by Richard Clarke, this book was written in 2010, and Richard Clarke had actually served the White House to Presidents Reagan, both Bushes, and Bill Clinton. He was the National Coordinator for Security, Infrastructure Protection, and Counterterrorism. And the basic premise of the book is that the next war that is actually fought, we had World War One, we had World War Two. World War Three is really not going to be on the active theater. World War Three would be more from in cyberspace. And if we were to look back at as far back as say 2007 with Estonia, which used to be part of Russia, and then they had their independence. Estonia was crippled for quite a while, and the financial impact to that was around at the time around 750 million US dollars. And why did they go to war with Russia? No, it wasn't a situation like what you see playing out right now between the US and Venezuela. All that happened was there was a statue, the statue of the bronze soldier, And that soldier was moved from the center of Estonia into the military cemetery, and Russia was annoyed about it. And Russia and their activists decided, you know what, Estonia, you have to pay for what you've just done. And so they attacked them. Sachin made mention of a distributed denial of service attack, basically sending so much garbage towards someone's network that legitimate people who are trying to get to you can't get to you. That's what that does. So they crippled their financial services, they crippled their media, and they crippled government services and held them literally at ransom for an extended period of time simply because they moved a soldier, a statue of a soldier. So we're not dealing with a soldier right now. And the views that I'm going to espouse here, these are my personal views. I'm not speaking on behalf of CYPFER here. I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer. The tensions that we see playing themselves out right now between the US and Venezuela, these are real things that we have to now factor in for Trinidad and Tobago and for the Caribbean from a risk factor, from a risk thinking perspective. Normally, we would think that when there's some kind of geopolitical tension, we're going to see all out soldiers with guns shooting at each other, and that it's only going to be limited to the battlefield or maybe government to government. But then there's going to be the fallout that comes into the commercial sector. And given the fact that we also have not only the nation states, but we have the state-aligned threat groups or state-aligned cyber threat actors, they would convert the political tension that they're seeing into some kind of economic disruption for their benefit or for the support of the country to whom they are aligned to. So from where I sit, or financial services, banks, insurance companies, definitely the energy companies, our ports, the port of Spain, the port of Point Lisas, our service retailers, our service providers. Sachin spoke very articulately about, the internet services that we consume here on the island and how we get out to the mainland US. Those are going to be intended targets that will create economic discomfort for us as citizens because we're perhaps seen as proxy for the United States. So when that takes place now, you can anticipate that there is going to be some slowdown in your payments. So interbank transfers, wires that need to go overseas, stuff needing to come into the port, you have a pause in your energy operations. All of that may come to a halt, but more importantly, from a disinformation perspective, it's the trust that gets eroded, the trust that we, the citizens, have in the infrastructure that goes, and then you automatically, as business people, you start to see the impact immediately because it hits you where it hurts the most in your revenues and in your profits. I want you, if you can, to think back to Costa Rica in 2022. Costa Rica had a ransomware campaign that was targeted against the country of Costa Rica to the point that the incoming president then, who's still the president now, had to declare it a national emergency because the entire country was held at ransom by a threat actor. The same thing could potentially play out for us here if we don't start to think ahead and start thinking about how do we deal with the risk impact. So I see this coming in 4 buckets. The first one, Sachin alluded to it, would be cash. Cash for cash for us as business people, whether you're small, medium, or even enterprise grade organization, the cash attack could come in the form of either straight up ransomware, where you're ransomed, your servers, your data, everything is encrypted, and then there is a demand that you have to pay in order to gain back access to that. Or the cash impact could come because of all of the turmoil and the tension that's going on and folks are distracted. A threat actor could now leverage that opportunity to sneak into someone's network and then try to get you to make a payment thinking that this is a legitimate course of business payment. We call it a business email compromise. Now that in and of itself opens up the other door, which says that for them to have gotten in the first place meant that you had some kind of vulnerability in the environment to begin with. So those are the two things that I see. And given the fact that during wartime, you're distracted and the tempo comes very quickly, it's very hard at that point in time because of the distraction to be as alert as you normally would. How do I know that this email that I'm supposedly getting from Sachin is in fact from the real Sachin? And with the creative use of AI from a cyber threat perspective now, sometimes you can't look at a badly worded email anymore because the emails are grammatically correct and they sound exactly like the original sender that you're accustomed to, so you're not sure. So that's number one. The second one that I'm seeing is the low and slow but expensive approach, which is I'm going to hit you where it hurts from an operational perspective. So let's take, for example, there was a cyber attack called NotPetya that occurred that hit the global shipping line Maersk. I can never get that name properly. Many years ago, where it wasn't just a ransom type approach, it was a wiper approach, meaning the moment that the malware got onto the server, the workstation, whatever, it just started to destroy everything. So even if you were trying to recover that, there was hopelessness there. So that approach is something that I see operationally that would be super destructive for us as a country. And Sachin alluded to this as well. If I don't come at you directly, I could come at you through your supply chain. So where do you have the connectivities? Do you have a third party, a trusted third party with whom you have a relationship and they're providing a service to you? So let me attack the third party so that I can get across to you. That is something that I see that will play itself out impact-wise. Sachin made reference to the fact that we're still an oil and gas economy, which means since we're oil and gas, we still have industrial type systems at play. You think Heritage Petroleum, you think Shell, you think BP, they have the industrial control systems, their SCADA systems. So the safety impact that's associated with that, the operational technology intrusion. One of the concerns I know an entity raised with me in my other life, my professional life with my company, was what's the likelihood that small boat attacks could be launched against the marine assets that we have out in the water? How do we protect against that? What happens if there are drone attacks? I mean, we have drones now. We use drones from a hobby perspective to take pictures and videos and what have you. But what if someone were to use a drone and fly the drone across and then impact the marine asset? What then happens there? And then the last one, that whole matter of the disinformation campaign. We're at a point now where we no longer know what to trust. When you hear something, is this real? Did the Prime Minister just say that? Or did the Minister of Government just say that? I'm certain all of you may have seen or heard or felt this. I know many Fridays ago in October, I'm merrily going about my business and then I just get a phone call, and the phone call was, "Where are you right now?" I'm like, "Well, I'm on the road. I'm heading to the Hyatt for a meeting." "Well, where's your wife?" "Oh, she's on her way to pick the kids up from school." "You need to get home." Why do I need to get home?" "Because something is coming and we don't know what it is." I'm like, "Are you sure? Is this verified?" And then there's that sense of panic. So out of a good abundance of caution, I turn around. And then when I stop at a plaza just to double check on something, I hear chitter chatter going on and people are starting to panic. And then you get by Massey, and Massey is rammed out because everybody's doing COVID all over again. We need toilet paper. So this whole disinformation that comes out, if we're not careful, we'll create the panic, and then we're going to literally leverage that. At least the threat actor will leverage that. So now, when you flip over and ask yourself, what do we need to start doing? For me, as an organization, you need to have your business continuity down pat. And part of having your business continuity down pat means you need to have your incident readiness or your incident playbooks completely defined that look at the different scenarios of what could play out. Sachin raised the point about backups. Normally in the business that Sachin and I are in, we would say that when you get ransomed, your backups are actually your very last line of defense, because when you need to recover, you got to go back to your backups. But one of the problems many companies have is they do the backups, but they don't validate that the backup was actually done. They don't test it. And what's the likelihood that when I did my backup, I actually backed up the bad thing that just struck me? So these are practices that now come into play when you look from an incident readiness perspective. The other thing that a lot of companies are struggling with and need to have a good grasp around is, what are my crown jewels? Where are my crown jewels located? What is the minimum thing that I need in order to keep my business going? COVID taught us a lot, and I don't know if we've truly appreciated that period that we went through with COVID. If I don't have the ability to go into my brick and mortar office on a regular basis like I used to pre-COVID, what do I now need to do in order to work remotely or from wherever, it doesn't matter, in a stripped down format, but still adequately service my client base with whatever it is, the service or the product that I provide at the end of the day? So there's that need to step back and re-engineer the business from that perspective so that you are more agile. And these are things that require obviously time. And if you're not thinking about, if you haven't been thinking about it, it's something that one now needs to start thinking about. The last thing that I will touch on, because I want the others to get into the conversation, is around the whole matter of communication. How do you communicate internally, and what are you communicating? Now, there's always been that fallacy that anything to do with technology, that's IT's problem. That's Sachin and David's problem. Anything to do with cybersecurity, that's Sachin and David's problem. But it isn't. This is a business problem. It's something that needs to be owned from the board to the executive management to the operations management to the line staff. It's something that's pervasive throughout the entire organization. So the tone and the communication that's set should be one where it's all inclusive. There is empowerment for employees. If you see something, you need to say something. If you feel something is wrong in your gut, you need to speak up and bring it to the right channels, escalate it to the right person. And then you need to be very alert and vigilant to the requests or stuff that come in that has urgent attached to it, because that creates a sense of, oh, it needs to get done now because it's coming from a Kamla. It says urgent in the subject line. I need to act on it immediately. And worse yet, because we are tethered to our handheld devices, we're tethered to our phones. And sometimes when you open a message on your phone, you don't get to see the full context as opposed to when you're sitting in front of your computer screen like I am right now. I can see everything clearly. You sometimes miss out on little clues and then do something that would then create a challenge. So this is something that I believe that needs to be driven home very forcefully. The ownership, the way that you communicate. There's some other stuff that I'll touch on, but let me allow the other guys to step in and then I'll come back around to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. It was very helpful to be reminded that other countries have faced, I would say much worse because they actually went through it, both Costa Rica and Estonia, as you say. And therefore, one can consider that there are lessons learned that we can capture from that. I think what makes it much more challenging for us now is, as you say, you just don't know what to trust because we don't know what is fake and what is real. And because we are so distracted because we're tethered to our phone, as you say, that can lead to small but very costly mistakes. So thank you for that. Keeghan, we'd love to hear your perspective now from St. Lucia. And I should not say it again, but I will. As a young person, being able to help us see what are some of the things that we should be considering.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I definitely agree with David. It's a little bit difficult coming after David and Sachin with I think that they shared a lot of interesting perspectives and coming with a wealth of experience. So I'll try to sum up because some of my points were taken in the initial conversation to see if I could give some unique insight. So I kind of threw out some of my notes, and I'm going to piggyback off of some points that David said I think is interesting. One from the like some of our banking infrastructure, things getting more expensive in terms, well, the possibility of getting more expensive in terms of interbank fees and our reliance on like US infrastructure, our intermediary banks. I think one technology I think we can look at right now to help in the consistent movement of our money, stable coins and cryptocurrencies. Actually, I think one provider, Stripe, as well, is also working right now on the stablecoin infrastructure Visa as well. I think also as like a retail or personal user, you can also create a wallet, create a stablecoin account, and also be able to still move money back and forth between currencies. I think that's like something that should seriously be considered when there's a possibility of the core infrastructure of banking could be at risk. Um, Also, interesting story as well in terms of email attacks and phishing in this type of period. I definitely think we need it, especially for sensitive emails or emails that's asking you to take an action. I think in this period, you need to be thinking about a secondary line of communication where you verify whatever is being sent to you with, if John sent you an email, giving John a call, hey, did you actually send this email? Um, it's very interesting. I think they get some of the attacks are getting a lot more sophisticated because recently I sent out salary and bonuses early to my staff, and I think like yesterday, a few of my staff received an email saying from the Orbtronics HR director, we sent out bonuses for you to be able to like access your bonus and whatever. Click this link and fill out some information. But there's no Orbtronics HR director. But it came from some seemingly Orbtronics related email address. So I think they're getting more sophisticated and they're able to extract more context about your business, which makes the types of emails and requests a lot more difficult to detect. So yeah, I think right now it's becoming a lot more important that you have a secondary line of communication that you verify information. So those are like some of the things that I thought was really interesting in examples that David brought up. I don't know how closely we all are following the situation with the US and Venezuela, but I think just recently, just as an example, like 4 days ago, the Venezuelan National Oil Security Administration systems, they were paralyzed. They had like a cyber attack where like the data was frozen. The oil was still there, but they didn't severely impacted their operations. So for 3 days, like this is one of the world's largest oil companies, and they were forced to use pen and paper. And they're in the middle of this standoff or conflict with the United States. So I think us as well, as business private sector executives, really need to be thinking about um, what are our key um, points of attack, what are the risk exposure that we have if those key points go down, and how can we mitigate those. Um, I think in the instance, in the scenario that we're in a conflict and a conflict breaks out with the United States and Venezuela, I think we should be thinking about if our network goes down, if we don't have internet access, um, what is the analog minimum that we're going to be doing to allow our business to continue? Um, in the worst case scenario, we already know. So there are some solutions to the problem, but some of the solutions can only be done over a number of years, and that might only be able to implement for the next cyber war that might be faced. So some of the solutions we also have to think of our near-term solutions, and one of those might be thinking about, okay, just how do I keep my business running if I don't have email, if I don't have payment systems, if I don't have X, Y, and Z. um, in the scenario of a standoff, and I think we have more of this data theft, IP espionage type of thing happening within this like kind of tension, Cold War type of standoff. I think this is a scenario where we as business owners and potential people that could get attacked is rotating our credentials, as I said, doing more backups a little bit more frequently. Actually checking on your backups, making sure things have actually been done. I know some people, well, our team, we set up this like backup system and we set and forget. I think it's actually a little bit more important to verify, make sure that, okay, if this information is stolen, we do have a backup and we can access it. Maybe it's access on-prem or it's access on a different server in a different location. And then even in the instance where tomorrow Venezuela and the United States they strike a deal of some sort, I think we still need to be operating in the mood of there's a possible standoff. I don't think it would still be the time to lower our guard. I think this is kind of the time where actors, either nationalists or outside, use it as like the chaos of peace. And this is another high opportunity area for them to attack. Whether it's United States actors, Venezuela's actors, or Caribbean actors as proxy to the United States. Unfortunately, us finding ourselves in the middle, um, the peaceful middle. Um, in terms of, so this was mentioned before, and I agree generally. We are heavily reliant on our northern cloud providers, the AWS, the Azure, Google's, any state-sponsored attacks on U.S. infrastructure, Caribbean and other places of the world become natural collateral damage. I think the solution to that is more long-term, and I don't think we able to solve it if this actually happens in the near term. But I do think it's a warning signal that our either persons in the room right now, our government officials should be thinking about our data sovereignty. How can we improve our data and critical infrastructure here within the Caribbean, where it's owned under our geopolitical environment? I do think it's also on the presumption or the assumption that us inter-Caribbean islands have less likely of a dispute than us with the United States or the United States with any other actor. That's the assumption that I am making in saying that CARICOM board is Caribbean company, so we should be coming together and thinking about how can we improve our data infrastructure that's shared amongst um, our Caribbean context. I do think before we even reach to the technical solution or the infrastructure solution, I think there's a political as well as more human conversation type of problem where we need to be more connected in our ideology, movement of people, movement of goods. I think in terms of a regionalistic perspective, we're still operating very much as individual countries doing our own thing, shooting in different directions. Um, the goal of CARICOM for a very long time has been this regional connectivity. I think it has moved way too slowly. I see it across many different forums. I think now is the time that I don't know if this is the event that accelerates it, but I think it needs to be accelerated. A lot of thoughts around that. Um, but yeah, so I think those are some of the things that I thought was not already mentioned, that I wanted to bring up. I think it's very important that we're thinking about our own sovereignty, that we're building a Caribbean that we can keep our lights on, regardless of what happens between DC and Caracas, DC and some other part of the world, or whoever begins warring, and being able to keep it as a peaceful Caribbean.
Thank you very much, Keeghan. Uh, I do like that point. It was one that was made last week as well by our panel about regional cooperation and collaboration to help us, and both in terms of infrastructure and, as you say, having those very key conversations that's going to put the relationships in place that we can do that. But I think you really underscored this point that irrespective of its US and Venezuela, what is happening means that there may be opportunistic actors. So we don't have to just think, okay, is there likely to be a Russian attack? The fact is, and I also like this term you use, the chaos of peace. The fact that there are persons who want to use this time as a vulnerability for the country, for our businesses, and try to then take advantage. So thank you very much, Keeghan. Now, I'd like to ask Kristian. Kristian, one of the areas that we haven't dealt with to a great extent is the use of AI at this point in time as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing your contribution, and particularly, apart from how difficult it is to understand what is fake from what is real, how exactly AI can be used to.
All right. Okay. Thanks again for having me. I appreciate that. It's an exciting topic. Thanks everybody for joining. I am from Canada, so what I am going to, give my experiences what others don't have is maybe some examples of what Canada has been working with, along with maybe some other countries as well, like Trinidad, and Trinidad very well. But I'm going to try to give more examples on that front too. But to speak about Okay, so if you want to speak more about the AI, so first I would like to say is that as an IT AI project manager professional for business leaders, cybersecurity only looks like an IT issue when really there's nothing going wrong. Okay, the moment the risk environment shifts, it becomes like what we said, a cash flow issue, a trust issue, and even a survival issue, crisis management plan with COVID and all that kind of stuff. So in these geopolitical tensions like US-Venezuela standoff and other countries that have been through these cyber attacks, is really not random. People have to know that it's not random. It's actually expected. So why don't we have a plan for it? Why do I say it's expected? Because it's been done before in the past. When tensions rise, cybersecurity, cyber activity rises too. Again, it is expected. It is asymmetric. So businesses get hit because they move money, deliver services, and hold public trust, often too much with less protection than even what the government standards give, right? So the questions for leaders should be asking right now is not how secure are we, right? It is when the environment shifts overnight, do we have exactly what to do in the first 48 hours, which are critical to keep the business standing? That's statistically proven within the first 48 hours, maybe even in 24 hours. You have to have some type of continuity of crisis management plan at that point to start to manage the issues that comes with most companies. I would say resilience means most companies will probably think, okay, what does that mean? Backups, firewalls, antiviruses, and all stuff. No, that's fast thinking failure. That's what I would call it. It's because things like what we have in Canada is modern escalation can show up for disinformation campaigns, like the confidence of ransomware and all that kind of stuff we've talked about, GPS spoofing and all those DDoS attacks and distract our team. But this is why cybersecurity must sit beside business continuity and financial controls and executive decision making, not under so much IT. It really becomes underneath that what has happened is that when these attacks happen, it's adjusting the way the executives and leaderships make decision making. Okay, now we all know that AI is a tool it's a powerhouse tool to make data-driven decisions. So how do we see that working in the future there? So one comes to mind is, okay, well, let me give you a little example here. So Canada actually hosts the G7 Rapid Response Mechanism Secretist, so which coordinates, analyzes information sharing and early warning on foreign state-sponsored disinformation. So while each G7 country kind of monitors its own digital information environment and shares signals across rapidly where threats are happening across the borders, it does it through coordination monitoring and rapid sharing, not actually so much surveillance, what most people would think. These G7 partners are in real time, so this allows countries to validate whether the same narratives or tactics are appearing elsewhere, right? Again, it's in real time. So Canada has formalized how it detects and responds to serious election interference through these critical election incident public protocols. So this also, again, when you talk about North America, it's a very sensitive topic when it comes to politics. It's very extremely serious, and then we actually have some type of active security protocols called, again, the Critical Election Incident Public Protocol, which sits inside the broader protecting democratic plan that Canada has. So I hope in the Caribbean we'll have something like that. I'm not sure maybe they do. I honestly didn't look it up, but those things will help definitely have a good guardrail. So when I would say the next, and other people had other opinions, right? But this is what I actually think from my experience. So I think the next actual national security threat is AI-driven disinformation and synthetic authority fraud, right? That's what I think. I'll tell you why. This is the next escalation wave. That's major national security. Disinformation, misinformation, not hallucination. Hallucination, again, most people think it's a very bad thing. It's actually there that gives you the gear that makes actually ChatGPT more humanized. What it's doing is trying to act as you. If you don't have the proper prompt, it still might hallucinate. It still will hallucinate. But what it's doing is trying to fill in the blanks from what you're giving it. It gives you the magic. What Satya Nadella and Sam Altman, it says word for word. It gives the magic of how it feels like you're talking to a human. That's hallucinations. Now, when we're talking disinformation, misinformation, that's just false information here. So these are where adversaries will come into play. We all know this, okay? So let's talk about it. AI generated audio, video, and messages. We've all seen these. We've heard about it on the news, on CNN, on 60 Minutes. Now, convincingly impersonate people, executives, your mother, your cousin, anything like that. You can get a phone call and sounds exactly like this through AI models, video, audio models. So so and trusted partners like your bank. Well, obviously, we've gotten those texts before us too, like, hey, your bank is this and blah blah, or Amazon, hey, son, you just bought an iPhone 16 or something, and check the receipt here and all that kind of stuff. So these attacks do not break systems. If you're thinking they're breaking systems, like I said before, it isn't. It's there, and they're trying to get information. They're trying to do adversary work, what adversaries do. This is breaking the decision making of the people that make the decisions and say, okay, should we move forward on this or should we not? A fake CEO call triggers urgent wire transfers, synthetic regulatory emails, pressure disclosures, deep fake videos spread panic faster than facts. Look at NATO. You have NATO, CISA, and even the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity has all flagged AI-enabled disinformation and synthetic identity fraud as accelerating national security risk. I think this is totally true. You will get calls like this when the election times come. People of your own family would be calling or texting you and saying, hey, make sure you vote today and let's vote for blah, 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 right? And even if you don't want to vote, say, okay, fine, I'll go and vote. I have the time. I don't know who to vote for, but you said so, so I'll do it, right? So this threat targets human trust, not so much about firewalls and everything. This is human trust. The whole thing about AI right now is that AI is an assistant, it's a co-pilot, it's not a pilot. The human makes a decision at the end of the day. I advocate that very, very strongly. Now, at the end, we have to have the knowledge, we have to have the knowledge of the subject and know how to use the tool, obviously. And we have to make better decisions. Now, AI is assisting us so we can have better outcomes. So it's non-biased as much as we can. Everything is biased, but as much as we can, and to mitigate risks and to build trust with our stakeholders, our executives. We need to build trust with them by better prompt engineering and stuff like that. And so, anyways, that's a different topic, but I just wanted to say that the threat targets for national security, human trust, and not so much physical firewalls and antiviruses and backups and cloud backups and all that kind of stuff. That's great stuff, don't get me wrong. But that's where I think that's the next major one. So how do we deal with that? So like I said, the first 24 to 48 hours, when I mentioned child happens, right? It's usually the first 24 hours before they even file a report. These type of things it's not a human, so we're actually looking to maybe in 48 hours. So 48 hours sounds good. So 48 hours response to AI-driven disinformation. So what you want to do is have immediate freeze. I'm just going to give you like one, two, three. I want to give you like 4 points. Immediate freeze, immediate focus. So freeze high risk financial decisions. Yeah, I need to verify the executive communications. Who's making these decisions, right? Are there people making these decisions? If there's not, there people have to make these decisions. You need to have executive decisions. So immediate focus. The command and control. Like I said, one spokesperson, right? No ad hoc responses. This needs to be no fluff, no ad hoc, but very linear. Okay, a narrative control, rapid internal clarification, external reassurance, and of course, you need to follow the legal and communications guidelines. So that's obvious. And we should have operational discipline, so extra approval layers for payments and temporary pauses on sensitive decisions, continuous monitoring on public narratives. So basically, I'll repeat those four again as immediate focus, command and control, narrative control, and operational discipline. That is something that you can do over in the next 48 hours. And you would have a better way to manage your risks when it comes to AI and stuff like that. There's another thing when I would have to say is that I'll give you an example of like just as that we're here, we're talking about undersea cables. I like that. I like that topic for Trinidad. Depends on subsea connectivity for banking and cloud systems, all that kind of stuff. Airlines maybe. That's pretty neat because actually in Canada, I remember that we had reminders of vulnerability from reporting repeated damage to major cable links from Nova Scotia and Newfoundland that highlighted how a single disruption can expose detection and response gaps. I remember reading about that. It's actually made it all the way to the Asia Pacific newspaper or something, especially for regions with limited connectivity options, right? So like, the East Coast of Canada, we had that. So when connectivity becomes fragile like that, your cloud access, your payment rails, your customer support, and logistics coordinations, these are all going to derail or degrade, I should say, at once because it's really dependent on each other. So why is or interdependent? So that is why undersea cable risks are more of a cyber physical risk. So our goal it would be obviously what the goal was for Canada at the end was to keep the business operating, obviously protect cash flow and maintain trust. Like I said, trust. So you would like confirm in the impact as fast as you can. You analyze it, activate a small command team, obviously keep the business alive and focus on how you're going to communicate with others. And basically, connectivity is not so much the IT infrastructure, right? It's the revenue infrastructure. And that's what you need to incorporate as well. I'm not saying to not incorporate because it's definitely 100%. It is IT infrastructure, but it's not just, it's also revenue infrastructure. Okay, so with leaving with that, I think because everything else was kind of said already. Again, I said what else can I put in? I could just say that disinformation it spreads faster than facts. Okay, and early clarity will protect trust. Trust in your business leaders, trust in your sponsors. You need to have this, especially with all of these drones and disinformation and all of these things that are happening around the world. This is where you can get stronger. So after things stabilize, right? You should use the event. Let's say after everything stabilizes with Venezuela and everything, right? You should use this event to justify um, um, resilient spending, right? How did that go? Have a lessons learned, basically, what you call in project management. Add redundancies where revenue depends on connectivity. Do a stress test on your responses before the next shock happens, and treat cloud telecommunications and data providers like a critical infrastructure because it really is. Everything is undersea and over in the cloud. But again, it's not just about infrastructure and firewall. It's at the end of the day, the next national big attack would be, I think, is the disinformation because of artificial intelligence, because of mimicking everybody. You can looks the same and he listens the same. It can write text just like you and knows how you speak. It can go into your LinkedIn and see how you respond to others. There's an app actually called Crystal Ball. It's actually free. Well, for a couple of things, if you ever want to know how people actually speak, Crystal Ball will actually go into your LinkedIn and look up all 100 posts that you have done, figure out what type of person are you. Are you very direct? Are you funny? Are you not humorous at all, or are you just bland or something like that? Anyways, I use those tools like that. That's just a simple way just to see you can test for yourself to see how these tools actually work. So what I'm saying is at the end, the last sentence I'll have to say is that if you prepare for the first 48 hours, the rest becomes manageable. So try it out yourself as a start for your next crisis or continuity management plan. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions if you have later on as well, too.
Thank you very much, Kristian. I think you covered quite a lot there, but the one thing that stayed with me very, very strongly is the sentence that attacks are not random, they're planned.
Yeah,
And because other people are planning this, it means that we too need to plan how we are going to respond. So I'd like to now invite the rest of the panel on to the virtual screen. Thank you very much, Quantrell. I know that there were some questions in the chat. Let me just check very quickly because I want to make sure that we are enabling our participants to share. Reshma, I see that you did put some questions in there. Would you like to unmute and ask your question? It would be a lot faster than me reading through.
Sure, no problem. Thank you to all the panelists who have joined us today. But honestly, my question was, what would be the plan? Like, what was your recommended scenario for if there was an emergency? And I think Kristian answered them so effectively. I'm not sure I have a question anymore. If I was to say I came up with an ad hoc question for all the panelists, I would say, what do you think is the reality that scenarios like this can be undertaken by Trinidadian private sector businesses? Because the communication between government operations and the actions that they're taking is, we don't have a seat at that table. So what could we as private sector communities that are somewhat insulated from what's actually happening between the major players take, because they control financial infrastructure? I mean, we still have very basic online banking, for instance. What methodologies do you recommend for us to harden ourselves a little bit when we don't have a seat at the table as to what the government is doing in terms of infrastructure?
So, David or Sachin, how well prepared are we? What can we do in the absence of not having full knowledge? Go ahead, David.
Well, I like the question that Rishma just put forward. I was actually waiting to see if Sachin was going to jump ahead of me, but anyway.
No.
Okay. Rishma, and to everyone else on the call, I would not wait for government or any other person in authority to do something. You know that adage here in Trinidad, when your neighbor's house is on fire, wet to your own. You need to start doing your own internal assessments. How do you, as a business, you have a shop front, you have a storefront, you have an online presence. What is the digital footprint for you today looking like to the rest of the outside world? If I were a threat actor and I were quote unquote driving by, what would I be seeing? So you need to work from the outside back in. What can they see? Are you just open sepulcher, or have you already taken all of the necessary actions to shut off all of the unnecessary stuff that is probably turned on, and then gone a step further to harden the stuff that you actually require? And then what's actually happening on the inside of the environment? Sachin made the comment, it's not if but when. I am going to expand that. It's not if but when, but how frequently. Meaning, assume that something has already happened and continues to happen. Because many companies today in Trinidad and across the Caribbean are actually actively being breached, but they just don't know. The threat actor is very much living inside. So how do I look from the outside in, do that assessment, but also how do I look from the inside, do that assessment as well. Another thing too, my data. I spoke about the crown jewels. Who touches my data? Why does this person need to have access to this data? What is the level of authority that someone has? Does someone have too much data access, etc.? These are all things that need to be reviewed. Believe it or not, there's still a lot of lax behaviors that are still at play. People leave organizations and their user accounts are still active. People leave organizations and their VPN accounts are still active. You deploy new technologies into the organization and the default passwords are still at play for those new technologies. So these are some immediate actions, Rishma, that I believe that you should take. Don't wait for the government to say something to you. You need to take these actions on your own. The other thing that I would do, and then Sachin definitely jump in, I would the dark web, for all intents and purposes, seems to be the resting place for everything and anything that takes place. If there's a data heist, if there's data leakage, whatever, that becomes the resting place for information. What's currently being said about you in that dark web? Have you ever done any examination of it? Threat actors like to talk. When they steal information, they announce, I have information. So engage with a trusted third party who could actually go and do some sleuthing for you and do some investigating for you to come back and say, okay, you know what? We found that there's active chatter going on about your organization, or we actually found credentials belonging to you in the dark web. We need to determine if these credentials are still good or if these credentials are stale. These are all things that you can actively take in order to be proactive and not wait for an authority to do something for you or say something back to you.
Yeah. So to add to David's, so I would have indicated that, so knowing is half the battle. You do want to identify those things up front. You want to be able, and I said that the attacks just don't happen, right? They are generally noise up front, and that's where threat intelligence comes in order to do it, right? So that whole thing with dark web, but also in terms of just looking to see who's knocking at your doors to know what's happening. And but I would reiterate what David had said as well, is that you have to look at what you can control. God grant me serenity and all those types of things. You want to right. So yes, I mean we a lot of corporate businesses work without understanding what the government is doing, right? I mean, we have how many years we've been trying to get a national ICT strategy to begin with. So the cybersecurity strategy, I'm not holding my breath for that one either. So you as a business has to look at what it is you're doing, um, and that's it. So David mentioned two things, right? So we talk about the tabletop exercises, which I think is something that everyone should do, right? And tabletop exercise is something that you could do relatively frequently, as in every quarter, do something, come up with a scenario, go through it, how you're going to act it, who needs to contact and all that. Because the point of that is understanding where your gaps are and fixing it, right? But before that, you should do a threat model. I don't think that a lot of people do enough threat modeling within their organizations to understand what are the assets that need to be protected and what's the scenarios that the actors that will come at it, the scenarios that you think. So you should build out some threat models to determine okay, what are the things that you can do, right? Because I mean, Kristian, and I think everyone had mentioned about the whole BCP thing, right? I like the idea that David had mentioned, and I think Keeghan had reiterated, which is that you need a minimum viable type thing. Don't expect at any point you're going to get untacked and it will continue in functioning, right? Nothing like that. So, Japan's biggest brewery, Asahi, I think that's how you pronounce it, right? They got attacked by ransomware, right? And brought a lot of things to crawl. They worked with their manual processes to continue, but that was still slow. And you have to expect some of these things, right? You when you build out a BCP, understand and expect that, right? So I'm pretty sure that Jamaica had a lot in their BCP about what will happen if a hurricane hit them, and we see what has happened. right? So we have to be very realistic with what it is to that's going to come inside here. And well, yeah, I'll end there in case anybody has any AI questions, because I do have something to add on that.
Well, I did want to ask, or continuing on what you spoke to, Sachin. I know you said do the tabletop analysis at least every quarter, and look at a threat model. But are we expecting the likelihood of an attack that can paralyze an organization for weeks on end still? Because I think that was the experience we would have seen with Costa Rica, with Estonia. These large scale attacks were ones that was very difficult to be able to maneuver and get back operations. So today is that also what we need to plan for. So as businesses, you're looking at 2 to 3 weeks of having things in place to be able to function in an analog way while your system to get back on.
Yeah, I think that should be part of any BCP, right? In terms of understanding, because I mean, there's a first time for everything, right? And I mean, they might be saying there's nothing new under the sun, but there are there's attackers are always ahead of defenders, right? They're always one step ahead, and we're always playing catch up. It's all that's like almost the reality of the
Yeah, but
situation, right? I always say that, oh, the attack surface is huge, right? And then a defender needs to be able to protect everyone. An attacker just need to find one, And so it's a lot of work to do this. So and so when something happens, you can't expect it to expect the unexpected. Those are the novel cases, right? The majority of cases, the majority of incidents are going to be handled very quickly, right? There is an incident in every organization every day. There is an incident, right? But it's handled very quickly. Whether it's the incident might be just be a virus detected or somebody sent a phishing email or something like that. Those are all incidents, right? But those are thing, right? If sometimes something will happen and escalates, and those are the novel incidents that might happen. You need to have it in your BCP how it is you're going to function with respect to that. Kristian mentioned that, which is the incident, or is it David? I think I can't remember which one. Your incident planning. You need to have that incident plan in terms of when things happening inside there. You have your playbooks, all those things sorted out within your BCP to be able to address those things, right? So business continuously planning is a very, very critical exercise for any business. Expect the unexpected.
okay, Sachin, do continue and share your thoughts that you wanted to on AI first. We just have less than 10 minutes remaining for our panel.
No, very quickly, in terms of, so I mean, everybody looks at AI and just think at LLM, right? But I would have mentioned about overwhelming persons, overwhelming resources. AI is because AI is very, very good at doing the same thing over and over and over and over, right? It doesn't get tired in any way, an aspect like that, right? So yes, there will be the disinformation. Yes, there will be the aspects of the phishing and impersonations, attacks, and stuff like that. But there's also the automated attacks that I would be more concerned with, because those are the ones that could very quickly overwhelm a system, and overwhelm your controls and overwhelm your protections that you may have in place. You know? That's the only point I wanted to make there. Right. So that's why you need to use AI for you. You had to fight fire with fire, essentially. So I think that was the point that I really wanted to get at. You have I don't. There's no getting away of using automated systems in order to protect infrastructure as it is now. Right. This has nothing to do with rising tensions or whatever. This is just the nature of the world and industry as it is right now.
Yeah, but
I
Sachin,
appreciate that.
you
Yeah, go ahead, David.
shouldn't look at it from the perspective of those using it as a replacement. You should look at it as using it as a partner, and I think
Yes.
that's a challenge for many folks. They fall into the synthetic confidence that comes with AI, thinking it can do all, and it can boil water. So really should look at it as a partner, not as a replacement.
Yeah.
Kamla, if I could just add something, one of the challenges that plays itself out, it's that lowering of the guard or lowering of our proactive stance. The moment, we're like 9-day wonders, something happens and everybody's excited and we do something about it, and then as soon as it dies down, we all lower our guard and kind of go back to some sense of normalcy. I think that's the thing. We have to stay on guard. Sachin said it beautifully. Attackers are always attacking and they're always staying a step ahead of the defenders. And it's a constant, it's a never ending cycle. You build a 10-foot wall, they come with a 12-foot ladder. You add 4 more feet to the wall, they come with something higher. So it's always going to be a constant thing. So I think what we need to always assume that there is going to be disruption, assume that we are going to be watched, assume that there will be an attempt to breach or attack, and then work backwards from that assumption to say, okay, let me constantly stay in a state of readiness. Let me make certain proactive steps. Even I will try to attack myself just to see what happens, just so that I can stay ahead of the curve. Because if you don't do that, you've lost the battle, as far as I'm concerned.
I find some of that to be a little bit scary, David.
I
I
know it
am
sounds scary, but
accepted.
it's the reality.
Yeah,
No, think
yeah.
about it. I want to look at it from let's step away from the cyber thought for a second. Let's look practically in a neighborhood. You know those cars that go around with that horn that says old battery buying, scrap iron buying? I've always had a concern about that. Are you really advertising that you are here to buy my scrap iron, my used appliances, etc.? Or are you just driving through the neighborhood to do reconnaissance? Why are you constantly driving through my neighborhood? And to be honest with you, I have started to do my own little correlation, because when I hear for break-in, I think to myself, but wait a second. I heard that horn last week Sunday, and then the break-in happened on Tuesday. What's the likelihood that the two events are tied to each other? So that's what I'm saying. There just have to be that constant vigilance, assume the worst and work backwards from it. That's the only thing that you can do. That's the world that we're living in. If we go to a direct conflict, assume that there's going to be automatic disruption. Once the disruption occurs, business is going to be degraded. You're going to be in a degraded mode of operation. Now, what does that degraded mode of operation look like for you? Are you able to do this for 3 days? Are you able to do this for 5 days? Are you able to do this for 2 weeks? Sachin spoke about the brewery in Japan. I'm Jamaican by birth. I've lived through so many hurricanes. I know how this thing works. When a hurricane comes, you automatically know I am going to be in a degraded mode for a period of time before normalcy returns. If we go into some kind of protracted standoff, there's tension, Cold War kind of thing going on. Is somebody watching me? Is somebody driving through the neighborhood, old battery buying scrap iron? Is somebody watching? So what am I going to start doing? So the whole notion of now monitoring, protecting the identities, Keeghan spoke about it, doing that secondary out of band questioning. Hey, I just got an email from you to make the payment. Did you send this? That kind of a thing. That's where you come in. And of course, if they were to shake hands, we automatically drop our guard, because everybody's going to exhale and say, oh, great, this thing is over. And that's when you have the spike take place. That's the moment because everybody guards, the guard just drops. So you just got to stay constant vigilance.
Thank you, David. We're just 2 minutes away from end time now, so I'd like each panelist to think what is their closing thought that they want to leave for our audience. It is very challenging, I would think. My mind has gone from just get totally offline into let's go back to working with cash. But of course, that's not realistic. But I also understand what Sachin said too, that we have to develop a capability to be able to respond in the same way. You fight fire with fire. So, like it or not, we have to continue to invest in our own understanding of this online world to ensure that our digital resilience is what we want it to be, because this is where we want to function. So let me ask each of you to just share in 30 seconds, if you can,
Mm,
so thought for our audience. And
okay.
and
Yeah, well,
Sachin,
yes.
go ahead.
Um, so I know this is based on a very this whole topic was on a very specific thing. But I do think that we have to always be vigilant. We in the Caribbean have always been on our own threats. Every year we have hurricanes. Every year we have natural disasters. Those are very similar type things that will disrupt us from a cybersecurity standpoint. Yes, we because it's just disruptions. It's just how the disruptions will come in and how the threats is. Spend time, do your BCP. If you need help, reach out to people who could help you get that going. There's a lot of tools, a lot of capabilities now to be able to do it. You don't have to do these things on your own. I'll just leave it as that.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Sachin. David?
I would say that you can only respond at the level of your preparedness. That's how I would put it. We're in a period of heightened tension, and heightened tension, uncertainty then becomes like a business risk multiplier. So this now becomes a leadership obligation. The more you're prepared, the stronger you are to respond to the situation. And guess what? Everybody's looking for a competitive edge. This preparedness could literally become your competitive differentiator, because if your competitor is unavailable to meet the needs of the client and you can, guess where they're going to go? They're going to come right to you. So that's how I'll end that.
Opportunity in crisis. Yeah, that's a great point that you just made, David. Thank you so much. Keeghan?
Yeah, I think my closing thoughts is really around like using this scenario or this standoff as the catalyst for us, one, to become more prepared, two, for us to start thinking about the infrastructure, the systems that we need to not only survive the standoff, but survive future attacks. And yeah, I think use this catalyst to kind of leapfrog ourselves in terms of our cybersecurity, our sovereignty, and our ability to withstand future attacks.
Thank you very much, Keeghan. Kristian?
Yeah, and just to reiterate, again, if you are preparing for the first 48 hours, like I said, you will no longer be reacting to crisis. You would actually be controlling it at that point of time. So use AI to cut through noise when pressure is the highest. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Kristian. And one of the things that I really appreciated that you said is that AI is the co-pilot. It's still human decision at the end of the day. So we have to live up to our responsibility in making that decision. So I'd like to really thank each of our panelists today. Sachin, Ganpat, David Antonio Greene, first time joining us on panel at CCGI, and I hope not the last time. Keeghan, it was wonderful to see you again from St. Lucia. Kristian, as always, it's great to have you here. Next week is Christmas, everyone. And I hope that we would not have any reason to have to come back with another discussion as to how we respond in the week of Christmas. You know, let's make it a season of goodwill and love and peace and understanding, knowing that something that, was added today. Uh, it's not a matter of if or when, but how often. So we have to keep our guards up. This online environment is where we now are. This is our modern world, and we need to develop the skills, the knowledge, the ability to handle it well. So, thank you all so much. A very, very sincere thank you to our participants as well. Monique had put the link in the chat just a few minutes ago. Please make sure to give us your feedback there. It really does help guide us in how we plan and execute on our vision and mission here at CCGI, which is to help prepare our directors. Let's ensure that our governance practices are always improving for the betterment of our region. Thank you all so very much. Have a wonderful rest of the day and have a wonderful Christmas season as well. Hopefully, there would be no need for me to see you until next year. Have a great day, everyone.